World Financial Group offers entrepreneurs from all backgrounds the opportunity to start their own business on a level playing field. Dr. Yana Woodhouse, receiving the WCM Wall Street Pioneer Award by the United Black Wall Street of America, Inc., is one of those entrepreneurs.
I see WFG and TFA as a place where African Americans with an entrepreneurial mindset can flourish. And the bonus, we help families and serve the communities across the country.
To learn more about us, go to worldfinancialgroup.com.
We are the sons and daughters of the soul. We are resilient and forever forward-thinking. We ask for nothing else than the opportunity to live and to create the lives that we were meant to live. We want nothing but an equal chance at options and possibilities. The same possibilities and options to live out our potential as our fellow man. We want to be heard, understood, and expressive in our reality. We are the future. We are the creative. We are here.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Good afternoon. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, the Art of War. I hope everyone is really looking forward for spring, once we start to get past the beginning of the year and we start to slowly move into February and March. Before you know it, it's going to be summer. That's the way I like to look at those things. Plus, I'm a Juneteenth baby, so I love warm weather. But we have quite a few days of cold weather before we get to that. Happy post-Martin Luther King Day for those who were able to take time to reflect on Martin Luther King and the work that he has done and the work that still needs to be done as it relates to create that dream that all men are equal, and I'm sure that will happen at some point. Nevertheless, I am very, very happy to have a guest on the show today that has been a friend for some time. He's a member of the Harlem Tourism Board, among other different boards and organizations that she's in. She has a business, Welcome to Harlem, walking tours. For some time now, she has also collaborated with a number of musicians to develop a jazz series, as well as tutorial programs on historical events in Harlem. And now, the much long awaited game, Harlem-opoly, is going to be a major component, not only in the Welcome to Harlem educational series, but for people who are interested in the best known urban community in the world. Uh, so please give a warm welcome to Miss Carolyn Johnson. How are you doing, Carolyn?
Hi, Tony. How are you? Thank you for the
I'm
nice
doing
introduction.
well. It doesn't just give you justice. You've done so much as it relates to allowing for people to understand some of the historic uh, significance of places that people walk by all of the time and never really understand it. And we lose some of that. Many of the historic landmarks that people allowed to be taken down because there wasn't enough understanding of how important they were in order to preserving a certain type of historic culture, which is why we have these organizations, landmark and historic preservation groups, to keep the story alive. But sometimes his story is different from our story. But
Most
what
definitely.
but one of the ways that we can continue our narrative is by some of the things that you've taken time and a lot. I know that you've been working on these things for some time, and I know that you've put so much work, not only in your tour, which we'll talk about, business, but in this new game that you have developed that will allow for people, wherever they are in the world, to come a little closer to the historic foundation of Harlem. And as I talk about it or write about it, one of the things that I say to your credit is that you laid the foundation for people to understand why Harlem has been and was and has been and
And
will
still
be
will be.
considered the black capital of the world.
Correct.
So tell us a little bit about you, your business, and then a little bit about how you segued into this wonderful project that you just completed.
Okay. Well, like you said, my name is Carolyn Johnson, and I am a licensed tour guide here in Harlem. I started Welcome to Harlem in 2004. And then from there, I collaborated with Barry Joe Bradley, and we wrote the Harlem Travel Guide, which was the first travel guide written about Harlem in 2010. From there, I started collaborating with Craig Harris, a world-renowned jazz musician, and we started something called the Harlem Jazz Series. And during the course of doing all of that, doing walking tours with students from schools and groups from other areas and stuff like that, when they were coming up here to Harlem, and they said that we were studying the Harlem Renaissance while we were in class and stuff, and we would do the Harlem Renaissance walking tour. I realized that the students did not have a very good foundation about the Harlem Renaissance and or Harlem, and I was like baffled as to what they was actually studying in school. So I had started putting together these little essays about some of the people and places that we would be visiting while we were doing the walking tour, and I would give that to the teachers with some little questions and stuff like that, and ask them to give them to the students as an assignment to make the tours much more engaging between me and the students as we were doing them in Harlem. And for some reason, the students really liked the lessons the teachers said. So from there, I started developing this website called Harlem Roots, which was going to be totally educational, reading comprehension lessons about the people, places, and events connected to Harlem on 4 different levels. So I was starting that, and then the pandemic came. So I went from paper to making it online. So this way, anybody, anywhere would have the opportunity to pull down these lessons and learn about Harlem and stuff. So after I got about a good 100 lessons up, I'm like saying, okay, how am I going to sell these lessons? So I was like, I'll make a Monopoly board. And that's what I've been working on for like the last 4 to 5 months, has been the development of a Monopoly board about the Harlem Renaissance, this one particular period, and working with a manufacturer to get it out there and stuff like that. So that's what I've been working on diligently for the last 5 to 6 months, trying to get this Monopoly board out there to the world as another learning tool for students, educators, and all of that stuff to learn about Harlem.
And tell a little bit more about Roots and how people might be able to plug into that. And then we'll look at some images on the board, which will actually circle back to Roots.
Exactly. So Harlem Roots, like I said, is totally educational.
It's ROOTS.
Yeah, Harlem Roots, ROOTS.com.
Mm-hmm.
And it is reading comprehension lessons, like I said, on 4 levels. So depending on the child's reading level, they can purchase a lesson, and the lessons like have different things on them. Like the lower level, which was like kindergarten and first graders, is just a 1 page where the parent would sit down and read with the kid, and they can go online, answer 10 little easy questions. Some of them have like little puzzles for them to do, word search puzzles and things like that. And then on the other levels, we have the reading comprehension, we have multiple choice, true and false, fill in the blank type questions. They have to do essay questions. We have infograms attached to it. And we also have a puzzle and something called fun facts about that particular topic that we're talking about. So that's a whole package together for the levels 2, 3, and 4. So the way I tried to connect the game board Harlem Roots back, the game board Harlem-opoly back to Harlem Roots was through the lessons. So some of the spaces that are on the game board are lessons that have already been completed and uploaded online. But you also have to keep in mind, when you're looking at Harlem Roots, it's not just going to be lessons about the Harlem Renaissance. There's going to be lessons about, there might be a lesson on Peter Stuyvesant, George Washington, George Gershwin, because Harlem is, it always was a multicultural community, and I'm trying to make that inclusive when I'm putting these lessons out there and stuff. I don't want people just to be so focused and narrow-minded thinking that it was just African Americans that live within these beautiful boundaries that we call Harlem.
Which is true. A lot of people are not aware of the rich cultural mix that was Harlem. I mean, the Marx Brothers, Houdini, Ed Sullivan, Jack Benny. You know,
listen,
Kirk Douglas,
Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. You know,
yeah,
in Harlem, James Bailey and stuff. They would be utterly surprised who came from here.
And which is what I was saying at the beginning. There are a lot of places that would have been historic locations had they not been, unfortunately, caught up into some of the things that were taking place in Harlem in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where there was in-rim and, you know, all of that. And a lot of the properties were abandoned
and neglected. And then once that happened, it was downhill.
It was downhill altogether. And even with some of the community organizations who were able to acquire property for, you know, $1 or whatever, after they got finished with the taxes and all of that other stuff, they couldn't hold on to it. And that's when I guess it wouldn't be fair to say carpetbaggers, but that's when individuals came in who had cash to buy people out for a very low investment and then turning around into a multi-million-dollar property, which, as many may say, is the American way, but unfortunately the culture went with it.
Right, because I mean, we can attribute a lot of that to redlining. We were redlined and still are redlined in certain ways as a community, and we're not afforded the opportunities to get bank loans and other things like other communities were. Nobody had sort of value in our community the way we did.
Right. Until they did realize the value, and then they tried to move us out.
And right. Tax us
But,
out, move us out by any means necessary.
right. I remember there was a saying that thank God for the housing projects, because the housing projects is like our Chinese. The Chinese had their wall. Harlem had his wall. It was the housing project, because you couldn't get past. You couldn't, if it wasn't for the housing project, Harlem would probably look like someplace in Europe now.
Well, it also depends where you are in Harlem as
Yeah.
to how many housing projects are around you. So if you're in East Harlem, oh yeah, you're flooded with them. Central Harlem, but when you go to West Harlem, it's a total different environment.
Right. And that's why West Harlem is the way West
As Harlem is. Yeah, you see Columbia just got bought out Fairway.
Yeah, $84 million.
$84 million.
And Columbia will benefit time and time again from whatever they put there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's another, a lot of people don't know that Columbia, is one of the largest landholders in New York City.
Yep.
But so tell us a little bit about some of the figures and some of the educational components that one can find in Harlem-opoly.
So when I was laying out the board, I wanted to include organizations. So you'd have the NAACP on there. I wanted to include organizations that were periodicals or things with writing and stuff. So you have 135th Street Library is on there. You also have the Amsterdam News would be a site on there. Then I went around the board, once you went past the jailhouse, because you start at Soapbox Corner, actually, which would be 135th Street. I wanted to, emphasize that as being a major focal point in our community. Once you go past jail, you start going into residence. So you might go from a boarding house to go into 409 to Strivers Road. So that whole road would be something in relationships to residents. Then the red that you would see, that is where you start going to places that you would hang out and have fun. The Cotton Club. You would also go to something like the Dark Tower, would also be a space, Connie's Inn and stuff like that. And then when you went on the last line of the board, you got to the ballrooms and the theaters and stuff like that. And versus having the four railroads, I used the four historical Black churches. I put those in those spots there so we would learn about that. And versus having the luxury tax and things like that, I put in historical events like the Red Summer, the Great Migration, and stuff like that. So I just tried to sprinkle a little bit of history all around the board as you went through, but then on the community chest and chance cards, that's when I started putting images of people that was associated with the Harlem Renaissance on the board. So you might have an image of Madam C.J. Walker, image of Marcus Garvey, somebody like Adam Clayton Powell Sr., James Van Der Veer, Florence Mills, and then, just these people of a significance to that time period and stuff like that. Unfortunately, there was not enough spaces and or cards to really delve into the amount of people and places that I could have added to the board, but I tried to put that I thought would be the most interesting to engage and start the conversation for people to start learning about these people, places, and events connected to the Harlem Renaissance. And so to help people understand and to know about these people, places, and events, I created a glossary online for the people to be able to go and look up, a brief definition of that person, place, or event that is shown on the board or either on the chance and the community chess cards and stuff as an educational way to hopefully bring them back to the original website, Harlem Roots, where they can get a full-blown lesson on that particular topic.
Now, how are you working your distribution?
Well, right now we're taking pre-orders, and God willing, and the boats moving and everything else going well, the game should actually be here by mid-February. We're
Black
angling
History
for,
Month. Huh?
yeah, we're angling for mid-February that the game will actually be here. Then people can place their orders. It's going to be online, but I'm working with Nalu to see if we can get it in their shop as the jump off point here inside of Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
And the main part is going to be the transportation. It's really costly to have stuff moved around, as you know, transportation, moving things around and stuff like that. But I am working with them to have them selling the game here inside of Harlem, and hopefully other organizations in stores and stuff like that, and museums and libraries or whatever would also be interested in purchasing it and carrying it as a product.
Have you been in conversation with Schomburg?
No, but one of my friends who does a lot of work with them, she's been in conversation with them. So hopefully we will continue that conversation once I get the physical games and stuff like that. So I want people to physically see the product in hand so they can see what they're getting into and stuff.
So so let us know if there's help either through the Harlem Tourism Board or the Greater Harlem Chamber. I'm sure that we can help with that conversation, because something like that should be in the Schomburg, and I'm sure.
Right, they're our main point of distribution for books and education and things like that about Harlem. It's unfortunate that we only have really two sources here in Harlem. That
Well, we have, it's the Studio Museum, it's the Schomburg, and hopefully within a month or two, the Harlem Tourism Board will have a home in a location that things like that can take place. It's a tourism-related location that will be part of the Soul City studio that's coming at some point into Harlem. So, and we look to have a number of tourists coming through there for a host of different reasons. That would be a good place. The other place that it's the Sisters Book Club, a bookstore.
Uptown on Amsterdam Avenue, yes. That would also be another place. Right. And I mean, believe it or not, Bank Street might pick it up. You never know.
Yeah, that's true.
Bank Street, because they did purchase the Harlem Travel Guide and stuff. So I will have that conversation with them. And also I'm going to check out Riverside Church, because they were also very supportive of the Harlem Travel Guide and stuff.
Right.
So, like I said, once I get the physical product in hand, it'll be a much easier conversation to have with them and stuff.
And, there are a number of, and what would really be great is to kind of introduce some of this to some of the institutions in the Department of Education.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make that connection with Mr. Banks. That is part of Board of Education, since he's part of Eric Adams' team and stuff like that. But most definitely to get it into Board of Education be a win-win. And I am a approved vendor on their vendor list, WMBE, the whole nine. Is just about making that right connection, because it's like it's massive. That's like a beast in and of itself to know which way to go.
Right. And those are some of the things that the Tourism Board can help with, and as the chamber. There was a question: how much will the game sell for?
Right now, it's selling for $44.99.
And does that include shipping and handling?
Nope, that's separate.
All right. So I guess there has to be an estimate given at some point when you start doing your marketing as to what the entire, cost will be, so people will know how to adjust.
Correct.
But you, the cards that people pick up once they land on a certain location, those are the cards that you focus on individuals who are noted in their contribution to the first Harlem Renaissance. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. So somebody like James Van Der Zeer, how many people knew who James Van Der Zeer was? If it wasn't for him, here we have the images of the money that's going to be used in the game, and that's
Yeah.
Stephanie St. Clair, who's
Yes,
a
so
major
she was definitely a major player with money,
a
especially the
major
numbers.
female in the game of being a number runners here, and Bumpy Johnson was her muscle and stuff. So I wanted to pay tribute to her as a businesswoman here inside of Harlem and put her on the money and stuff.
And one of the things that was always interesting, and I noticed that you had played it there. It was kind of a no-brainer as far as historical sites. Is 409 Edgecombe Avenue,
Yeah.
and that was whether it's Walter White, um,
Thurgood Marshall,
Thurgood Marshall,
W.B. Du
W.B. Du
Bois,
Bois,
Roy Wilkins, Eunice Carter.
Stephanie St. Clair.
Stephanie St. Clair. It's limitless to the amount of people that lived in that building.
Lived in that building.
And the talent and intellect
his,
that
I
was
think
in that
it was
building.
On the third floor. What his apartment?
13A.
13A. It
That
was
was
called the White House, the
Mhm.
Black White House,
That's right.
because of all of the influential people who would come up there to meet, to put together things, plans that was the start of the NAACP came out of there,
Exactly.
So, and that's still standing,
Yes.
and it's important for especially younger people, but people in general, to know where that is. I know that I learned about that when we were doing tours. That this was, you might remember that when Harlem Week started doing bus tours out of Gracie Mansion. We would have a press conference at Gracie Mansion, and we would have about 3 to 4 buses where we would take international press from around the world that will come to learn about Harlem and different types of historical landmarks about Harlem, which and a lot of companies, a lot of bus companies that Harlem Your Way and a number of others came from those tours that we would give to allow for people to understand that Harlem was still alive. And that was under the leadership and support of the Honorable Percy Sutton, and at that time, Hope R. Stevens, and a number of other people to kind of keep that name going. And that's how the tourism focus started to happen again, because these reporters would go back and write about Harlem in a way that it had not, because at that time, the city, New York City, was bankrupt, and so Harlem was really in trouble, Harlem,
Right.
South Bronx, or what have you.
But as bad as it was, people still wanted to come here.
Still
Which
wanted
is,
to come
which is, and still even today.
because of the history.
Exactly. People, they don't know what's here, what to expect, but they just know the name Harlem.
Right.
And
Because
they
a
want
lot
to
of
say
the
they
people,
went and they came and they saw.
and you know what we were able to find out, especially through the chamber, was that, as we were saying before, Harlem was a melting pot. When they started doing construction for the Penn Station and the Five Points area, with all of those people, those groups who came in, the gangs of New York, they all moved uptown before they moved into Long Island and
Another
the
place,
Bronx.
yeah.
They all meet. That's why you had the Jewish community, you had the Italian community,
Yeah,
you had
Tammany Hall was
the
up here.
Irish, yeah,
Yep.
So
Not an accident.
so that's why the history is important, because a lot of times people who are just moving in and establishing themselves kind of believe that they were the pioneers, which is which
Far from
is
true.
not true. For
Exactly.
it, I remember on 8th Avenue, even before we renamed it as Frederick Douglass Boulevard, at night you didn't walk down 8th Avenue between
Not at all.
125th Street and 110th Street. That was a kind of like a punishment assignment at night for those, officers who either knew or had, done something, because it was risky business.
Yeah.
It was
Between the
dark
abandoned
city.
buildings, the garages, the lots, and just the environment in general.
And the
I mean,
drugs and the,
yeah, 116th was just like, oh my God.
across 110th Street, all
Yeah.
of the, but again, 42nd Street was not any better. So,
Right.
42nd Street was as bad as it was, uptown was, rough. And a lot of people have now taken advantage of that change, but that change was a slow movement of beginning to do this whole revitalization things. Community Board 10, at the time I was the chair of the Economic Development Committee of Community Board 10. My buddy Lloyd Williams was the chairperson of Community Board 10. At that time, that's when a lot of these things took place. The whole rezoning for 8th Avenue, so that there could be commercial space there. So,
Right. That was very
all of that stuff,
instrumental in bringing that strip back.
that was what was able to allow for those things to take place. But that came, the water main on 125th Street. We had the oldest water main in the city of New York, which meant ours was the first water main that had to be redone. And there was no real background as to how to do that. That was all done between 121st Street, as you know, between between 12th Avenue and the from river to river.
Right, which is about 16 blocks. People don't realize how wide Harlem is as a community.
Right. And we had to, and by chair of the Economic Development Committee, when the merchants were coming in because they would turn the water off, clean a business, or, and there was no coordination. Con Edison would come in one day and the telephone would come in one day. And so we had to, the Community Board 10 had to pull together all of the services, and coordinate a pamphlet that kind of gave direction and times and schedules so that the businesses could know. And that was used as a foundation for the rest of the city.
Oh, wow. That's good to know.
Because it was the first time that it took place.
It's something, a project that massive was going on.
And the reason why it became so important is because 125th Street, all of the major lines, all of the subways, all of the bus lines, they all had to come through 125th Street. So what happened on 125th Street
affected all of New York.
All of New York had,
I think that's still the second busiest throughway in the city is 125th Street.
Right. So
people feel, it's unbelievable.
And being the chair of the Economic Development Committee at that time, at the Community Board in itself, everything came through the Community Board. So that was an interesting time, but that really shaped the foundation for, what happened in the rest of the city when these things happened, but also what kind of started to bring Harlem back, thanks to the Honorable Percy E. Sutton. He, as the chair, the Ways and Means Committee of New York was controlled by the borough president at that time. After Percy left, that changed.
Right.
But so he actually had more power than the mayor because he controlled the money. And it was a Harlemite. That's how we got Harlem Week, and that's how we got all these things going, because he was a very powerful individual.
Right.
And so those are the things, which means we talked about this before. you got to have at some point after you get your success in this first, we have to have a second Harlem Renaissance.
Oh yeah, no, this is just the
Board.
beginning. You have no idea. The wheels are turning as to the other boards that I want to make and stuff. This is just board number one.
Yeah, I mean, because there's so
it's
many.
so much rich history here. This can develop into 7 or 8 different boards depending on the topic that
That's
one
true.
is wanting to focus on in regards to that. In regards to Harlem and stuff. So yeah, no, this is just the beginning.
And tell people, because this is a broadcast that goes all over. I always tell people, Jackie Orange, a number of people, when you give your tours, even if you live here, like myself, who grew up and lived in Harlem, you learn so much. And it allows you to, a walking tour allows for you to look at the community in a different way. Because
I see
the
rainbows.
places, you really say, wow, that did happen here. And as you say, it's international. A lot of people thought that Harlem was 125th Street, but if you go to Jamal Mansion, where George Washington said that he was overlooking Harlem Heights because of his first victory.
That's it.
The first victory
Harlem Heights
was at the Battle of Harlem Heights. That's when, that was a turning point. Even though he and Lady Jamal had a little relationship.
That's a whole nother, I ain't touching that one.
That's a whole other tour.
At Aaron Burrow, how did that work out for him? Okay.
Right. A lot of people don't realize Alexander Hamilton. Why is there that monument? And Grant's tomb.
That's it.
Why, is Grant's tomb the president's tomb in the Harlem community? Because all of the Southerners would not allow for him to go to Arlington or any other place.
Well, he couldn't go to he didn't want to go to Arlington because he wanted to be buried with his wife.
Right.
And his wife would not be allowed to be buried in Arlington. And he always loved New York City. And that's how they wind up picking Harlem. Well,
the how that goes. He was a very progressive president, even though he bent the elbow a lot with the drinking. But he had an ambassador to Russia. He was a African American, and I can't think of his name. But it's all in the tomb if you go there.
Yeah.
He put together it was, I guess, one of the first GoFundMe's, but he put together a program of all of the Black churches to raise money for the tomb.
Right. But I mean, he did a lot as a president. People don't realize after the whole Reconstruction, he did a lot.
Well, and that's why the Southerners hated him, because General Ulysses had to surrender his sword to Grant.
Yeah, no, Grant did a lot after the Reconstruction period and all of that. And we're fortunate to have it here because we have 2 national memorials here inside of Harlem. Go figure.
Right. Now the thing is that a lot of times people, until they go to what's called, it's the Ulysses S. Grant Memorial, but it has that whole story about the first Black ambassador appointed to Russia, who's and as you mentioned before, we have 2. Yeah. Because that Harlem was Hamilton Grange.
That's why Hamilton Heights.
Right.
Alexander Hamilton.
Right. And it kind of was brought into light with the show Hamilton, but the fact of the matter is that Hamilton was a mulatto.
Oh yeah.
Came
from the island, yeah.
Well, his mother was, a native of St. Kitts. And how we learned that, I mean, it was Lloyd Williams and myself. We were the proteges of Hope R. Stevens, who was the first Black president of the Greater Harlem, or it was the Uptown Chamber of Commerce. And he took us to St. Kitts and Nevis. And that history was so clear then. We saw all of the, information about, Hamilton and how he came over. He had no money, Well, the play kind of took
Right.
that
He was
on.
penniless and an orphan. Him and his brother, they were both orphans.
Right.
So,
well, the whole issue about the orphan was because of his heritage.
Heritage, right.
So when he came here, there was no records, but we know that his father was a seaman and his mother was a native of St. Kitts.
Right.
I mean,
they were never married.
Nevis. Yeah, they were never married, right?
Nevins, yeah, but they were never married. You never, and he came over here with nothing. It turned out to be one of the greatest, contributors to the
Would have
United
been
States.
a president, and
if it wasn't for the letters in the affair.
And he couldn't shoot straight.
Yeah, that too. But yeah, but the fact that he was willing to forsake everything to say, "You will not blackmail me and hold this over me," spoke volume of him as a person.
And this is kind of the folk story, but it wasn't the letters that really created the duel. From what I was able to learn from some of the people who are older, like in the Stevens, is because Barr called him.
No, Aaron Burr.
He called him an N-word in public, and that was an insult.
Yeah,
and actually, that information was the city, the Museum of the City of New York had an exhibit that kind of talked about some of that stuff, which was an interesting exhibit. I'm not sure whether it's still up, but those are the things that we really don't understand, and actually, when Obama became president, there had been a lot of comments that, well, you weren't really the first. You was almost one that was there before you, but you got shot. But those are the things that many people don't realize as relates to this whole village that is so meaningful. I always tell the story that Dave Dinkins, the first mayor, when he was invited to go to South Africa by Nelson Mandela to speak, and he went to a classroom and he spoke to some young people, and he said, yes, proudly, I was the first Black mayor of New York City. And one of the kids raised their hand and said, wow, I didn't know New York City was in Harlem. Because he just figured,
That's it. New York City was inside of us. We weren't inside of them.
The Big Apple, the musicians who would say that we're going to meet back at the Apple, which is on 135th Street, the bar on 135th Street, and Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard. There's just so much stuff.
You'd be surprised how many tourists come here today don't realize that Harlem is attached to Manhattan. They think like we're some faraway land, like, like.
Well, it's interesting. Two things. One, when we started doing the tours, especially the Japanese, I was, a tour guide on the bus, but they were telling me stuff that I didn't know. Where is blah blah blah, and so we were learning more. But then again, when I went to Japan, I know a little bit more about some of the places there than they did.
They know about,
where Mamoto Musashi and all of those things. But people have known, especially coming from Europe, because a lot of the musicians, a lot of athletes, a lot of the people, they had to go abroad in order to get,
to make a living, to make it.
But when they started talking about things, that's when the favor became, so big as it relates to the black culture. I mean, you know, you look at you don't have to even go to the Beatles. You can look at Elvis Presley. All of they all
mimicked and
imitated.
copied.
Right.
I mean, what's the Elvis Presley record on Jailhouse or whatever? Some record that he sang, or Hound
Jailhouse
Dog,
Rock.
and it wasn't his record.
Yeah. No.
It wasn't his record.
No, who was it? You know, neither would look at some of the records that the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. Their beginning records was sounding black.
Yep.
which was very interesting as it relates to those histories. And so much don't even start talking about the Apollo.
Right.
And how so many people got their information there. Matter of fact, I think you have in one of your cards the Tree of Hope or the Tree.
Yeah, that is I think that's a community chest card. I have an image of the people at the Tree of Hope. Yeah, right. That's a community chest card. Yeah.
Which part of it now is still at the Apollo, but that's where all of the musicians would come. Where it was on 7th Avenue, I think, and 135th Street. That tree. Right?
7th Avenue and 132nd. It was on the corner there. Well, right. It was on 132nd, 133rd in front of the Lafayette Theater, right down the block from Connie's Inn and stuff. But Bill Bojangles and Ralph Cooper Sr. was instrumental in putting up the marker on 7th Avenue and bringing the actual tree stump to the Apollo Theater where it sits on the stage today.
And Ralph Cooper Sr. was an interesting guy. Matter of fact, one of the things that I'm happy about was to be able to know these guys like Ralph Cooper, Honey Coles, Sandman Sims, all of these, they were so influential. But Ralph Cooper was a cowboy, in the black movies. He was a star, and then he became, the major host for the Apollo. He helped really put together the amateur hour concept.
Right, but he started up at the Lafayette Theater, then he segued his way down.
Right, because he was an actor.
Yeah, he started up there.
He was an actor. He came to Apollo as he started to get older, and but he was an actor. Sandman, was a dancer. And all of these things. Honey Coles was a dancer. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, I remember Honey Coles talked about how he had to loan James Brown a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
When,
him to go on stage, yes.
Yeah, him to go on stage. But those are the things that, again, games and information on the roots is very important. Matter of fact, we talked about this, but I think it's going to be something that we might be able to get with some of the funds for tourism that's coming down from the state, is to create, whether it's at Columbia or City College, probably City College, again, a tour guide program.
Yes.
Because for especially for like seniors, or people who can, because some of this stuff can be virtual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To
really get some of the stories that I'm in my mid 70s, but there are other people who are a little older who still need to have conversations before they're gone.
Yeah, so there's a lot of knowledge out there that we need to hurry up and harness before it's gone.
Yeah, before it's gone, because there's so much has left us as relates to different locations, different things that took place. You had mentioned something on the card, and I wanted to get back to it. Was the Red Summer? Was it?
The Red Summer, when we were having all the riots.
Right. Which because there were two periods when they were riots.
1919.
Okay, right.
When they were having all the riots, Missouri, New York, Detroit, all the riots that were happening in the city, all the racial riots that were going on and stuff like that.
And a lot of people don't remember that these things kind of happened because I remember the ones in the 60s, and then when Kane got shot and all these things, but they were a lot more. I mean, when they had in the 5 Points area, when they had the riots, and then there was a black guy, and I can't remember his name now, who invented it was the subway break, I believe, but
Yes.
it took jobs away from people because it was a way that the subway could either stop. It was something that had to do with the subway and its movement. And I know that there was a major riot, and they were
because nobody was there to pull the
black,
brake anymore.
Right. You know, so there was a major riot with that. But those are the things that I, really want to try to make sure, and that's why I'm so honored and blessed to be on programs like Soul City, because this conversation will go on after we're not here.
Yeah.
And
another event they had on there that a lot of people didn't know about was probably the Civic Club dinner.
I'm not sure about
that. Was an event that they had where they were starting to honor and recognize a lot of the African American artists, the writers and stuff like that. It was a very important meeting that they had. That's on there, the Red Summer, the Great Migration, and one more. But yeah, something called the Civic Club dinner.
And that took place here?
Yeah, that took place in New York City, yeah.
And then I'm just thinking back.
Yeah.
You have the Teresa Tower on there, right?
You have who?
Teresa, the Teresa Hotel?
No, because the Teresa Hotel was not built, and we didn't have access to it until 1970. People fail to realize during the Harlem Minute, the Teresa Tower wasn't built back then. It was just at the end of it, like 1933, 34, something like that. Might have been the end of the Harlem Renaissance. And technically,
because at one time that was the biggest
hotel. But I put it on there. It was built in 1913, but African Americans did not get access until 1970.
Okay.
So it really didn't have a big significance for us during the Harlem Renaissance, because it wasn't like we was in there shimmying and shaking and having a good time.
But then again, African Americans were not able to get into a lot of the places, the Cotton Club and
the Cotton Club was originally known as Club Deluxe, that was built by Jack Johnson, and at least we were in there as entertainment. But I mean, the Teresa Hotel, I just didn't put it on there because I don't think that it would have a bigger variance in. Have a big deal as far as the Harlem Renaissance period went.
Yeah, because it was a different Renaissance.
Right, that was a different Renaissance.
But it was, I think, at one time the largest hotels in the city.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Being built in 1913, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah.
Being built back then. That wouldn't surprise me. But just the history of that in and of itself is unbelievable. But
how can people reach you?
Well, the best way to reach me is to go to one of the websites, welcometoharlem.com. And we have like the little thing online where they can contact me that way, like the little automated thing online. Welcometoharlem.com has it. Harlem Roots has it. Harlem Jazz Box. But if they want the direct email, it would be info@welcometoharlem.com. That's the best way to reach me.
Info@welcometoharlem.com.
Yep, info@welcometoharlem.com. That's the best way. Yeah.
Now, I know that the jazz series is on a hiatus, right? It starts back in April.
Yeah, we start back up in April.
And the jazz series, for those who might not know, it was every Friday for a period of time that I remember.
So we started, it was Tuesday afternoons and Friday evenings. But since the pandemic, we've only been doing Friday evenings.
Right. And some of the best jazz, Craig Harris put together a stellar casting. And some of it, I remember the last one that I went to, and I posted it, and I keep talking about this, the string
Breathe,
concert.
all strings.
Breathe, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was free, and it was one of the best concerts that I've been to. I mean, it was so entertaining.
Yeah, no,
And
Craig had a very good year last year. Did a lot
yeah,
of big projects, Sun Ra and stuff, working on the film, Judas and the Black Messiah. He was
right,
very
the
busy
Black
last
Messiah.
year.
Matter of fact, I went back and watched the movie just because I knew that he was in the the
Oh,
music
right.
for that.
Now, so
Right,
now you listen to the music in a different way.
right,
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
also the cartoon. What was the cartoon that was out? Um, God, about the black composer that he did music for. I
Oh,
can't
I
think of
don't.
the,
I,
but it was a movie.
yeah.
Uh,
I don't
but
know.
again, and he's a neighbor. He's that's the other thing that a lot of people are not aware of. A lot of the people have moved back. In the second Harlem Renaissance, a lot of the entertainers, the actors, the
Yeah.
you know
I moved back to
uh,
Harlem. Yeah.
directors, uh,
And be
are here.
surprised who lived here when they walk down the block. They're like, oh my
Walk
God,
down the
who
block.
knew?
Yeah,
Have to
but
live somewhere.
well, which is why it's important to maintain certain types of information that's necessary as to the history, because a lot of times people will start to think that you know, there's our story and there's his
It's
story.
his story. Yes.
You know?
There's two
And
versions for history.
right. And one of the things that, again, Carolyn, and I can never say it so enough, is that you have really been in the forefront of making sure that the history of this community, of the Harlem community, has been maintained and put into a position where um, people can look back and actually see exactly what happened, not what
What
people
they think happened,
speculate.
but somebody told them, right. I mean,
Right.
like you said, being a product of Harlem, I was like, we're the luckiest ducks. We live in the world's most fascinating neighborhood. And it's up to us to tell the story, not somebody else come from the outside and tell it for us. This is
And
our story to tell.
so, if you want to understand one, the history of Harlem, there's a 4-course program on. And what's the website for Roots?
HarlemRoots.com. That's the website.
www.harlemroots
Roots.com. Yeah.
roots.com.
And we'll be loading up more lessons shortly. Like I said, I've just been so focused on the game board, but we do have a bunch of new lessons that we're going to start getting online and stuff like that. It's a very tedious process working a regular job and juggling all of this stuff in the evening. So slow but steady.
Well, now that we're dealing with this virtual learning, sometimes it allows for us to do some other things. But we're about ready to end, and time flies again, Carolyn. There's so many things I haven't even touched bases with you with, but Harlem-opoly is the name of the game. You can reach it if you're interested in it. You can go to the site www.harlemopoly.com.
Yeah, Harlem-opoly.com.
Uh-huh.
There's a dash in between Harlem and Opoly.
You can go there for pre-registering and the like. And in each of your sites, there's references to the other locations that you can go to. So
yes,
that pretty much does it. Congratulations,
thank
Carolyn.
you.
I am proud of you. There probably will be some other things there. I think it was 2 weeks ago. If you go to the Harlem Community News page, you'll see a story that we did. I write about you a number of times with your jazz series and this and your tours. But thank you. I'm happy that you are still sticking with us as a member of the Harlem Tourism Board.
Oh, yeah.
And And we have to talk about, this tourism course that needs to be done as tourism starts to come back into the line. It's an economic development opportunity, and also with trying to get the game into the
Board of Education. That would be
Board of
great,
Education.
because I think it'd be a great learning tool for the
We
for
should
the
talk
kids.
about that. And if you're listening, a lot of people out there, you can ask those questions too. Why shouldn't it be in our learning system? Thank you, Carolyn. Carolyn
Thank you
Johnson.
for having me.
Take care, and thank
Bye.
you all for watching our show. We'll be back next week. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, The Art of War. And thank you, Matt McCoy, founder
Thank you, Matt.
of Soul City. We'll be back next week, God willing. Take care. Enjoy
Take
yourself.
care. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Urbanology.